My son handed me dog food on my birthday. The dented can of expired Purina hit my kitchen table with a metallic thud. The label was peeling. The expiration date read March 2024. It was now May. My 68th birthday dinner, according to my own flesh and blood. "Freeloader! Eat this!" he snarled, his voice dripping with contempt. I am Easton Murphy, and what happened in the next 24 hours cost my son Derek everything he thought he was entitled to inherit. $2.1 million to be exact. All because he assumed his broke old man was too stupid and poor to matter. I looked at that expired dog food, then at Derek's disgusted face, and quietly said, "Thank you for showing me who you really are. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from." This is how one birthday insult triggered the most expensive lesson my son ever received, and why he ended up begging at my door just 24 hours later. The pattern started 3 years ago when Derek moved back home after his divorce. At first I thought it was temporary help, a father supporting his struggling son, but somewhere along the way I became the burden. "Dad, we need to talk about your finances," he'd say, standing in my living room like he owned it, which in his mind he did. "You can't keep living like this." Living like what? I'd maintained this house for 27 years, paid every bill on time, never asked him for a dime. But Derek saw the modest furniture, the 15-year-old television, my practical clothes, and drew his conclusions. "Financial deadweight," he called me to his friends on the phone. I heard him from the hallway. The old man doesn't understand money, never did. That's why he worked factory jobs his whole life. Factory jobs, like there was shame in honest work. Like building transmissions for Ford for 32 years was somehow lesser than his marketing position at a dental supply company. The disrespect escalated when my grandchildren visited. 8-year-old Emma asked why Grandpa's house looked old and poor. Derek laughed. "Because Grandpa never learned to invest, sweetheart. That's why it's important to get a good education." Standing right there, like I was invisible. Last month, Derek announced his plan to help me downsize. Translation: sell my house and move me into a senior community. "For your own good, Dad, this place is too much for you." Too much for me? I'd been maintaining these 1,200 square feet since before he could drive. But Derek had decided I was too old, too poor, and too stubborn to make my own decisions. The family meeting was the worst part. Derek gathered his sister Michelle, his cousin Rob, and his ex-wife Sarah around my own dining room table to discuss Dad's situation. Then they spoke about me in third person while I sat there. "He's probably got maybe $30,000 in savings," Derek estimated. "The house might be worth $250 in this market. If we sell, we could get him into Sunset Manor for 5 years, maybe 6. Sunset Manor. I'd driven past it. Concrete block building with a chain-link fence around the parking lot. "What about assisted living?" Michelle asked it. Derek shook his head. "Too expensive. He can't afford it." Can't afford it? The man who'd quietly put himself through community college at night while working double shifts, who'd invested his overtime pay for 23 years, while Derek spent his 20s buying craft beer and concert tickets. But they didn't know about the downtown meetings, the twice-weekly trips to the financial district that Derek assumed were doctor appointments, the business cards in my wallet that said private wealth management and estate planning. They didn't know about the shoebox in my closet, not the one with old photos, the other one, with quarterly statements and dividend checks and account numbers that would make Derek's head spin. Most importantly, they didn't know about Margaret Foster, my attorney, or James Harrison, my senior account manager at Citizens Bank. People who'd been calling me Mr. Murphy with genuine respect for 15 years. But Derek was about to find out. The birthday incident wasn't spontaneous. It was the final test. I'd been watching my son's character deteriorate for months, hoping he'd remember basic human decency, hoping he'd remember that respect isn't negotiable, regardless of someone's bank account. When he walked into my kitchen that Saturday afternoon with that dented can of expired dog food, I knew exactly what kind of man he'd become. And I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. If I stayed silent, Derek would strip away everything that mattered. The house was first. He'd already contacted 3 real estate agents. I found their business cards on my kitchen counter with handwritten notes. Market estimate $285K. Quick sale possible. Quick sale. My home of 27 years reduced to a real estate transaction because my son decided I was financially incompetent. But the house was just property. What Derek was really stealing was my dignity. He'd convinced my grandchildren that poverty was shameful, that their grandfather was a cautionary tale about poor life choices. 8-year-old Emma now looked at me with pity. 10-year-old Marcus asked his mother if Grandpa was going to be okay. Going to be okay. Like I was some charity case. Derek's campaign against my competence was systematic. He'd intercept my mail, claiming he was helping with paperwork. He'd answer my phone when family called, painting picture of a confused old man who needed supervision. Last week, he told my sister Janet that I'd been forgetting to pay bills. A complete lie. I'd never missed a payment in my adult life, but Janet started treating me like an invalid, speaking slowly and asking if I understood basic concepts. The financial manipulation was getting worse. Derek had started hinting about power of attorney. Just temporary, Dad, so I can help with the complicated stuff. Complicated stuff. Like I hadn't been managing money since before he was born. I overheard him on the phone with Michelle. We need to move fast before he makes any major financial mistakes. At his age, one bad decision could wipe out everything. One bad decision. The irony was suffocating. Derek himself was drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed at $34,500. Car payments 3 months behind. His mortgage company had sent 2 warning notices, but somehow I was the financial disaster. The stakes weren't just personal anymore. Derek was poisoning the entire family against me, creating a narrative where helping poor Dad justified controlling every aspect of his life. Michelle had stopped calling directly. She'd text Derek for updates about how Dad was doing, like I was an invalid who couldn't speak for himself. Rob started offering to help with repairs around the house, implying I couldn't afford professional work. When I declined, he whispered to Derek about pride getting in the way of practical help. Even my neighbors were being fed lies. Linda Parker, who'd lived next door for 12 years, mentioned that Derek had told her about my fixed income struggles. She'd started leaving covered dishes on my porch with sympathy notes. Sympathy. For a man who hadn't asked for help and didn't need it. The breaking point was Derek's meeting with Sarah's father, Robert, a family friend who happened to be an elder law attorney. Derek had scheduled a consultation about Dad's situation without telling me. I found the appointment card in Derek's jacket. Initial consultation. Guardianship procedures. May 15th, 2:00 p.m. Guardianship. He was planning to have me declared legally incompetent. The evidence Derek was building was all circumstantial, but effective. An older man living modestly in a working-class neighborhood. No visible investments, no obvious wealth. Just a retiree who drove a 10-year-old Toyota and shopped with coupons. If I didn't act, Derek's narrative would become legal reality. A judge would see the surface evidence. Elderly man, modest home, son claiming financial irresponsibility. Without knowing the full picture, guardianship might seem reasonable. Once Derek had legal control, my actual wealth wouldn't matter. He'd have authority to sell the house, move me to Sunset Manor, and manage my limited resources for my own protection. The cruelest part was how Derek justified everything as love. I'm doing this because I care, Dad. Because you can't see how bad things really are. Bad things, like having a paid-off house, excellent credit, and more money than Derek would earn in 3 lifetimes. But Derek's assumptions about money were about to become very expensive. The investment research I'd been doing wasn't for my own portfolio. It was preparation for a different kind of investment. An investment in teaching my son about consequences. 23 years of careful financial planning hadn't been about accumulating wealth for its own sake. It had been about having options when character mattered more than comfort. Derek was about to learn that respect isn't negotiable, and disrespect? That comes with a price tag of exactly $2.1 million. The confrontation started over my weekly grocery bill. Derek found my receipt on the kitchen counter. $43.18 at Kroger. Ground beef, potatoes, milk, bread. Basic staples for a man living alone. Dad, we need to talk. And he waved the receipt like evidence of a crime. This is exactly what I'm talking about. What's the problem? Look at this. Generic everything. Store-brand cereal. Marked down meat. His voice carried that familiar tone, the one that said he knew better about my own life than I did. I stayed calm. The food's fine. Fine? Derek's laugh was sharp. Dad, you're eating like you're broke. I'm being practical. No, you're being stubborn. He pulled out his phone, swiping to his banking app. Look, I'll transfer you $200 right now. Buy some decent food. The offer hung between us like an insult. My own son drowning in debt, trying to give me money he didn't have. Keep your money, Derek. Dad, stop. His frustration was building. I know you're proud, but pride doesn't pay bills. My bills are paid. Barely. He gestured around my modest kitchen. When's the last time you bought anything new? When's the last time you went to a nice restaurant? I don't need nice restaurants. See, this is what I mean. Derek's voice rose. You're living like money doesn't exist because you don't understand how it works. There it was, the accusation that had been building for months. Explain it to me, I said quietly. What? How money works, since you understand it and I don't. Derek blinked, sensing a trap but not seeing it. Dad, it's not about intelligence. Answer the question. He straightened, switching into lecture mode. Okay, money is about leverage, investment, growth. You can't just stick it in a savings account and hope for the best. What's wrong with savings accounts? They're for poor people. The words came out before he could stop them. I mean, people who don't know better. Poor people like me? Dad, you worked factory jobs your whole life. There's no shame in that, but what? But you never learned to make money work for you. Derek's confidence was returning. I've got investment accounts, retirement funds, diversified portfolios. How's that working out? The question hit like cold water. Derek's jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Your diversified portfolio, how much is it worth? That's not the point. It is the point. My voice stayed level. You're lecturing me about money while you're 3 months behind on your mortgage. Derek's face flushed. How do you... Because your mortgage company calls my house looking for you. Because you listed me as an emergency contact on credit applications. The truth was simpler. I'd run a credit check on my own son, something any co-signer would do, which I'd never agreed to be. Dad, my situation is temporary. $34,000 in credit card debt is temporary? How do you know that? Same way I know about the car payments, the personal loan from your cousin, the second mortgage application that got denied. Derek stared, recalculating. You've been checking up on me? You've been making decisions about my life based on assumptions. I thought I should know about the facts. That's different, is it? I pulled out my own phone, opening the banking app Derek didn't know existed. You want to talk about understanding money? The screen showed my checking account balance. Current amount, $47,212. Derek looked at the number, looked again. That's just your checking account? That's 3 months of expenses. 3 months? His voice cracked. Dad, how much money do you actually have? I closed the phone. Enough. Enough for what? Enough to know that assumptions can be expensive. Derek was quiet for a long moment, processing. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That I'm not the financial disaster you've been describing to everyone? I was trying to help. No! My voice hardened for the first time. You were trying to control. Dad, I never meant... You meant exactly what you said. Poor people don't understand money. Factory workers are financial idiots. Old men need supervision. I didn't say that. You said exactly that. I stood up. The question is what you're going to do about it. Derek looked around my kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time. The modest appliances, the practical furniture, the life of a man he'd assumed couldn't afford better. Dad, if you have money, Why do you live like this? Because I don't need more than this. But you could have more. Having and needing are different things. Derek shook his head. I don't understand. I know. I walked toward the door. That's exactly the problem. The phone calls started the next morning. Derek found me in the kitchen with my coffee, speaking quietly to someone he didn't recognize. Yes, Margaret, I understand the timeline. No, I want everything ready by Sunday afternoon, exactly as we discussed. I hung up as Derek entered. Who was that? Business call. What kind of business? His curiosity was sharper now, tinged with worry. Legal business. Derek poured coffee with forced casualness. Anything I should know about? Eventually. The non-answer clearly frustrated him. Since yesterday's revelation about my checking account, Derek had been watching me differently, looking for clues he'd missed, signs of wealth he'd overlooked. He'd already searched my desk drawers. I'd heard him last night, going through papers while he thought I was asleep. He'd found utility bills, insurance statements, property tax records, all perfectly normal documents that revealed nothing about investment accounts or hidden assets. This morning he was trying a different approach, direct questions disguised as casual conversation. Dad, can I ask you something? Go ahead. When you go downtown twice a week, where exactly do you go? I'd been expecting this question for months. Doctor appointments mostly. Which doctor? Different specialists. Heart, blood pressure, the usual old man stuff. It wasn't technically a lie. I did see Dr. Peterson quarterly for routine checkups, but Derek didn't need to know about the other appointments. The ones in glass office buildings with marble lobbies and brass nameplates. Do you need rides? I could drive you. I manage fine. Derek tried another angle. It's just some of those downtown parking meters are expensive. I could help with gas money. Help with gas money. The man who couldn't make his car payments wanted to subsidize my transportation. I appreciate that. So you'll let me know next time? Sure. Another lie. My next appointment was Thursday at 10 a.m. James Harrison, Senior Private Banking Manager, Citizens Bank Wealth Management Division. We'd be reviewing third quarter portfolio performance and discussing estate planning updates. Derek would not be invited. The phone rang again during lunch. This time I let Derek see the caller ID. Harrison, James, Citizens Bank. Want me to get that? No, I've got it. I answered formally. Hello, Mr. Harrison. Yes, Thursday at 10 is perfect. I'll bring the documents we discussed. Thank you. Derek was listening to every word. Everything okay with your account? Routine stuff. What kind of routine stuff? Banking business. Dad, if there's a problem with your money, there's no problem. Then why is a bank manager calling you personally? Good question. Most customers didn't get direct calls from senior management. But Derek didn't know that James Harrison had been managing my accounts for 15 years. Didn't know that private banking clients received different service than regular checking account holders. Customer service, I said simply. Derek looked skeptical but didn't push. Not yet. Wednesday evening, another call. This time I stepped into the hallway for privacy, but Derek followed. Margaret, everything's prepared? The documents are notarized? All 3 copies? Perfect. When I hung up, Derek was standing in the doorway. Margaret again? Yes. Dad, who is Margaret? A friend. What kind of friend needs 3 notarized copies of documents? I met his eyes directly. The kind of friend you call when important decisions need to be made. Derek's face went pale. What important decisions? You'll find out Sunday. Sunday? Family barbecue, 3 o'clock. You're cooking. Dad, what's happening Sunday? I walked past him toward my bedroom. Nothing you need to worry about tonight. But Derek was already worrying. I could hear him pacing in the living room, making phone calls to Michelle and Rob, speculating about mysterious appointments and unknown documents. He was right to worry. Sunday was going to change everything. Sunday's family barbecue started normally enough. Derek had invited everyone, his sister Michelle and her husband Tom, his cousin Rob, his ex-wife Sarah with the kids, even my next-door neighbor, Linda Parker. 12 people total, gathered in my backyard under the string lights Derek had hung that morning. He was playing the dutiful son, flipping burgers, refilling drinks, making sure everyone had lawn chairs. The perfect host in his father's home. The conversation flowed easily at first. Work stories, vacation plans, the kids showing off soccer moves on the grass, normal family gathering stuff. But I could see Derek watching me, calculating when to make his announcement. It came during dessert. Derek stood up, beer in hand, calling for attention. "Hey everyone, I wanted to talk about something important." The chatter died down. Sarah gathered the kids closer. Michelle and Tom exchanged glances. "It's about Dad." Derek gestured toward me with practiced concern. "We all love him, and we want what's best for him. Here it comes. The thing is, Dad's been struggling financially. He won't admit it, but the signs are all there." Derek's voice carried just the right mix of sadness and determination. The generic groceries, the old furniture, the way he clips coupons and shops clearance racks. I sat quietly, letting him build his case. "I've been doing some research into senior housing options, places where Dad could have help with meals, transportation, medical care, places he could actually afford." Michelle leaned forward. "What kind of places?" "Sunset Manor has an opening. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe. The monthly fee is reasonable, especially if we sell Dad's house." "Sell my house." The words hung in the summer air like smoke. "The house is too much for him anyway," Derek continued. "Too many stairs, too much maintenance, too expensive to heat in winter." Rob nodded along. "Makes sense. My grandfather went through the same thing." "The timing's actually perfect," Derek said, warming to his theme. "Real estate market's strong. Dad could probably clear $200,000 after paying off the mortgage." Paying off the mortgage. Another assumption. $200,000 sounds like a lot, Sarah said carefully. "But nursing home costs?" "That's why we need to act now," Derek interrupted, "before Dad makes any financial mistakes that could jeopardize his future." The word mistakes hit like a slap, as if 70 years of life had taught me nothing about managing money. "I know this is hard to hear," Derek said, looking directly at me for the first time, "but sometimes adult children have to make tough decisions for their parents." Adult children making decisions for their parents. Tom cleared his throat. "Have you talked to Easton about this?" "Dad's not thinking clearly about his situation," Derek replied smoothly. "He's too proud to admit he needs help." Too proud, too confused, too poor to matter. "The thing about old people," Derek continued, getting more confident, "is they don't understand how expensive everything's gotten. Dad thinks he can live on Social Security and whatever's left in his savings." "Whatever's left in his savings? Some people just never learned to plan ahead financially," Derek added, glancing at his ex-wife. "Dad worked factory jobs his whole life. Good jobs, honest work, but not the kind that builds wealth." "Factory jobs don't build wealth." The final insult, delivered in front of my grandchildren. 8-year-old Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Why is Grandpa poor?" Sarah shushed her, but Derek answered anyway. "Grandpa's not poor, sweetie. He just doesn't have as much money as some people because he worked different kinds of jobs." "Different kinds of jobs? Lesser jobs. Jobs for people who don't understand money." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for a response, waiting to see how the old man would handle being publicly diagnosed as financially incompetent. I took a slow sip of my iced tea. "Derek, you mentioned selling my house." "Yes, Dad, it's really the only option that makes financial sense." "And you've researched the market value?" "Of course. I got estimates from 3 different agents." "What did they estimate?" Derek pulled out his phone, consulting notes. "Between 270 and 290. I'm thinking we list at 285 and see what happens." "Interesting." I set down my glass. "What about the mortgage balance?" "Well, you've been paying on it for what, 27 years? Probably down to maybe 40 or 50,000? Murmurs of agreement around the table. That sounded reasonable to everyone. "Actually," I said quietly, "the mortgage was paid off in September 2019. Dead silence. "Paid off?" Michelle asked. "Completely. No monthly payment for 6 years." Derek's confident smile faltered. "Dad, are you sure? Maybe you were thinking of—" "I'm sure." I pulled out my phone, opened the photo app, and showed him the mortgage satisfaction document. Recorded September 15th, 2019. Final payment $47,329. Derek stared at the document. Where did you get $47,000? Good question. I closed the phone. Where do you think? The backyard had gone completely quiet, except for the distant hum of evening traffic. Dad, Derek said slowly, how much money do you actually have? Enough. Enough for what? I looked around the table at all the faces, family members who'd been planning my future without knowing the first thing about my present. Enough to know that assumptions about money can be very expensive. Derek's face was red now. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, standing up slowly, that maybe you should have asked me about my finances before announcing them to everyone. The phone in my pocket buzzed. A text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Actually, perfect timing. Derek, you wanted to know about my financial situation? I gestured toward the back gate. Why don't you ask her yourself? Margaret Foster, Esquire, was walking across my lawn in a navy business suit, carrying a leather briefcase. The family barbecue was about to become something very different. Good evening, Mr. Murphy. Margaret's voice carried the authority of 15 years practicing estate law. I apologize for interrupting your family gathering. Derek stood frozen, burger spatula still in hand. Dad, who is this? Margaret Foster. My attorney. I gestured to an empty chair. Margaret, please join us. Attorney. The word rippled around the table like an electric shock. Sarah gathered the children closer. Michelle gripped Tom's arm. Rob set down his beer and straightened up. Mr. Murphy asked me to bring some documents he thought the family should see, Margaret continued, settling into the chair with professional calm. Derek found his voice. What kind of documents? Margaret opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Financial records primarily, investment statements, property documents, estate planning materials. Estate planning? Michelle's voice cracked. Standard documentation for clients with significant assets, Margaret explained matter-of-factly. Significant assets. Derek's face went white. I'm sorry, Derek stammered, but there must be some mistake. My father doesn't have significant assets. He's living on Social Security. Margaret looked genuinely surprised. Social Security? Mr. Murphy, didn't you explain your situation to your family? I shook my head. They never asked. Dad, Derek's voice was strangled. What situation? Margaret consulted her papers. Perhaps I should read the portfolio summary. She looked to me for permission. Please. Margaret cleared her throat and began reading in her courtroom voice. Investment portfolio summary for Easton James Murphy. As of market, close Friday, July 28th, 2024. E-Trade brokerage account ending in 4962. Total value $2,127,834.67. The numbers hit the table like physical blows. $2 million? Derek whispered. Margaret continued reading. Holdings include Apple Incorporated, 250 shares, current value $89,400. Microsoft Corporation, 180 shares, current value $67,200. Vanguard S&P 500 Index Fund, 42,000 shares. Derek dropped the spatula. It clattered on the concrete with a metallic ring. This breakdown represents 23 years of consistent investment, Margaret explained to the stunned family. Mr. Murphy began his portfolio in 2001 with an initial investment of $8,000 from overtime pay. 23 years. While Derek was buying craft beer and concert tickets, I was buying stocks. Dad, Michelle's voice was barely audible. You're a millionaire? The portfolio value fluctuates with market conditions, I replied calmly. But yes. Sarah stared at me like I'd sprouted wings. Easton, why didn't you tell us? Nobody asked. Derek collapsed into his chair. But you shop with coupons. You drive a 10-year-old Toyota. You live like what? Like you don't have money. Having money and needing to display it are different things. Margaret pulled out another document. There's also the matter of property ownership. Mr. Murphy, would you like me to read the deed information? Property ownership? Rob leaned forward. Margaret consulted her papers. Mr. Murphy owns this residence free and clear. Purchase price $89,000 in 1998. Current assessed value $285,000. We knew about the house, Derek said weakly. Did you know about the rental property? The what now? Rental property, Margaret continued, at 412 Maple Street. A duplex purchased in 2015 for $140,000. Current rental income, $2,200 monthly. Current market value, approximately $200,000. Derek looked like he might vomit. Dad owns rental property. And then there's the trust fund, Margaret added casually. Trust fund. Those words landed like grenades. Trust fund, Michelle squeaked. Margaret flipped to another page. The Derek Murphy Educational Trust, established in 2003 when Derek graduated high school. Original funding, $80,000. Current value with compound interest, $675,400. Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The trust was designed to fund Derek's education and early career development, Margaret explained. Mr. Murphy has been adding to it annually, intending it as a gift for Derek's 30th birthday. My 30th birthday was 4 years ago, Derek whispered. Yes, Margaret said simply. The funds have remained untouched. Linda Parker, my neighbor, was staring at me in shock. Easton, you're worth over $3 million? Margaret did quick math. Investment portfolio, $2.1 million. Real estate equity, approximately $480,000. Trust fund, $675,000. Liquid savings, roughly $300,000. Yes, approximately $3.5 million net worth. $3.5 million. The backyard was dead silent, except for the sound of Derek's labored breathing. I don't understand, Sarah said finally. Easton, if you have all this money, why do you live so modestly? Because I don't need more than this. I gestured around my simple backyard. Money isn't for showing off. It's for security, for options, for making sure your children have opportunities. Derek looked up sharply. Opportunities? The trust fund was your opportunity. Derek, college tuition you never had to worry about. A down payment for your first house. Startup capital for any business venture you wanted to try. But you never told me. I wanted you to earn your own success first. To learn the value of work before you learned the comfort of wealth. Derek's face was ashen. Dad, I thought you were broke. I know. I tried to put you in a nursing home. I know. I served you dog food. I remember. The shame hit Derek like a physical blow. He doubled over in his chair, head in his hands. Mr. Murphy, Margaret said gently, should I explain the changes you've requested? Changes. The word hung in the air like a sword. Derek looked up with desperate eyes. What changes? I met his gaze directly. The changes we're making to the trust fund, Derek, and to my will. Margaret pulled out final set of documents. Mr. Murphy has decided to redirect the trust fund to charity. St. Michael's Children's Foundation will receive the full $675,000. And the will? Completely revised. Mr. Murphy's estate will now be divided between 3 charities. Derek Murphy's inheritance has been adjusted. Adjusted to what? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Margaret read from the document. To Derek Murphy, my son, $0. Character cannot be inherited, but consequences can be earned. The silence that followed was absolute. Derek stared at the papers in Margaret's hands like they contained his death sentence, which, in a way, they did. Margaret placed 3 copies of the revised will on the picnic table. Mr. Murphy, are you certain about these changes? Her question was purely procedural. We'd discussed this decision for 2 weeks. Completely certain. Derek found his voice. Dad, wait, please, let me explain. Explain what? I asked calmly. Explain calling me a freeloader? Explain trying to put me in Sunset Manor? Explain serving me expired dog food on my birthday? I was wrong. I was completely wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry. I nodded. That's good. Sorry is a start. Hope flickered in Derek's eyes. But sorry doesn't undo 24 hours of planning to control my life. Sorry doesn't erase telling my grandchildren that their grandfather is poor because he's stupid. Derek winced. I never said stupid. You said I didn't understand money. Same thing. Margaret tapped the documents. Mr. Murphy, we do need to complete this today. The notary is waiting. I picked up the pen. Who witnesses the signature? I'll witness, Linda Parker said immediately. After what I heard today, this young man needs to learn some lessons. I'll witness too, Tom added quietly. Michelle shot him a look, but he shrugged. What he did was wrong. Derek looked around the table desperately. Michelle? Rob? Sarah? You're going to let him do this? Michelle spoke carefully. Derek, you tried to put Dad in a nursing home. You told us he was financially incompetent. I thought he was. You assumed he was, Rob corrected. There's a difference. Aunt Sarah was holding the children, who didn't understand why Uncle Derek looked so scared. Easton, are you sure about this? It's a lot of money. It's my money, I replied simply, and my choice how to use it. Derek made one last desperate play. Dad, what about Emma and Marcus? What about their college funds? What about them? You're their grandfather. Don't they deserve something? I looked at my grandchildren, confused and frightened by the adult drama they didn't understand. They deserve a grandfather who's treated with respect. They deserve to learn that family members don't exploit each other. Derek's shoulders sagged. Dad, I'll change. I swear, I'll change. Good. Change is important. I signed the first document. But change doesn't happen because of money. Change happens because of consequences. The pen moved across the paper with finality. Easton James Murphy, witnessed by Linda Parker and Thomas Crawford, notarized by Margaret Foster. The second document redistributes the trust fund, Margaret explained as I signed again, $675,400 to St. Michael's Children's Foundation. Derek watched his inheritance disappear with each stroke of the pen. The third document, Margaret continued, establishes the new estate distribution. Upon Mr. Murphy's death, his assets will be divided equally between three charities: St. Michael's Children's Foundation, the Cleveland Food Bank, and the Veterans Housing Coalition. 3 signatures, 3 documents, 3 copies each. Derek's financial future evaporated in 9 pen strokes. Is there anything else, Mr. Murphy? Margaret asked. One more thing. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. Derek, you mentioned helping with my grocery money. Dad, please. I'm transferring $500 to your account. Derek blinked. What? For groceries, since you're worried about my eating habits. I completed the transfer. There? Now you can buy me some decent food. The cruel irony wasn't lost on anyone. Derek, who'd just lost a $3 million inheritance, was receiving a $500 grocery allowance from the man he'd tried to control. Margaret packed up her briefcase. Mr. Murphy, the documents will be filed tomorrow morning. After that, these changes are permanent and irrevocable. Permanent and irrevocable, I repeated. I like the sound of that. Derek sat in stunned silence as Margaret left through the back gate. The family barbecue was over. Most of the relatives began gathering their things, avoiding eye contact with Derek. Linda Parker squeezed my shoulder. Easton, I had no idea about your situation. I'm sorry Derek misled me. No harm done. Michelle hugged me carefully. Dad, are you going to be okay? I'm going to be fine. Better than fine. One by one they left. Sarah with the confused children, Rob with mumbled apologies, Tom and Michelle with promises to call soon. Derek remained at the picnic table, staring at the place where $3 million in documents had been signed away. Dad, he said finally, what happens now? I looked at my son, broke, humbled, and finally seeing me clearly. Now you learn what respect actually costs. The first consequence hit Derek's bank account Monday morning. His mortgage company called at 8 a.m. Payment number 4 was now overdue. Without the expected inheritance to cover his debts, Derek faced a choice. Find $9,000 immediately or begin foreclosure proceedings. He called me at 8:15. Dad, I know you're angry, but I need help. The house. What about the house? They're starting foreclosure. I was counting on... I thought when you passed away... You thought you'd inherit enough to cover your poor financial decisions. Yes, his voice was small. I'm sorry. How much do you need? Hope crept into Derek's voice. 9,000 would stop the foreclosure. Have you considered selling something? Like what? My car's underwater on the loan. I don't have any investments. What about asking your sister for help? Michelle's still not speaking to me. The family dynamics had shifted overnight. Word of Derek's behavior had spread through our extended family like wildfire. His cousin Rob had shared the story at work. Sarah had told her book club. The narrative was simple and devastating. Derek had tried to steal his father's house while calling him a financial failure. What about a second job? I suggested. Dad, I'm 44 years old. I can't just start delivering pizza. Why not? Because I have a college degree. I'm a marketing manager. You're a marketing manager who's losing his house. The words hit Derek like a slap. Dad, please. I know I screwed up, but I'm still your son. Yes, you are, and sons need to learn responsibility. I hung up. Derek's social consequences were equally brutal. His ex-wife Sarah had shared the story with mutual friends, focusing on how Derek had humiliated his father in front of the grandchildren. The phrase, served his own father dog food, became Derek's scarlet letter in social circles. His neighbor Jim Hendricks stopped returning Derek's calls. Their weekly poker game quietly excluded him. Even Derek's coworkers began treating him differently after Rob shared what had happened at the family barbecue. It's not about the money, I overheard Jim telling another neighbor. It's about character. What kind of man treats his father like that? Derek's dating life evaporated completely. In a small social network, word travels fast about a man who exploits elderly family members. Women Derek had been casually seeing suddenly became unavailable. By Wednesday, Derek was facing the full weight of his choices. He'd lost his anticipated inheritance, $3 million. He'd lost family respect. Michelle and Rob weren't returning calls. He'd lost social standing. Friends avoided him at the grocery store. He'd lost financial security. Foreclosure proceedings were moving forward. Most importantly, he'd lost the comfortable assumption that other people would solve his problems. The psychological impact was crushing. Derek had spent years feeling superior to his poor father, lecturing about financial literacy while drowning in debt. Now everyone knew the truth. Derek was the financial disaster, not me. Thursday morning brought another consequence. Derek's employer, a small dental supply company, called him into HR. We've received some concerning reports about your personal conduct, the HR director explained, specifically regarding elder abuse allegations. Derek's face went white. It wasn't abuse. You served your elderly father expired dog food while attempting to gain control of his assets. Is that accurate? It's complicated. Mr. Murphy, our company serves healthcare clients. We can't have employees involved in elder exploitation, even in their personal lives. Derek was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. No job, no income, no prospects. Friday afternoon, Derek appeared at my front door. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 5 days. Dad, can I come in? I let him in but didn't offer coffee. I've lost everything, he said simply. Have you? My house, my job, my friends. Michelle won't talk to me. Sarah won't let me see the kids unsupervised. What about your health, your education, your ability to work? Derek looked confused. What do you mean? You haven't lost everything. You've lost the consequences of your poor choices. There's a difference. Dad, I can't start over at 44. Why not? Because I had a plan. The inheritance, the house sale proceeds, the trust fund. I was counting on that money. You were counting on money you didn't earn from a man you didn't respect. Derek winced. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you did wrong? Derek was quiet for a long moment. I assumed you were weak because you lived simply. I assumed you were stupid because you worked with your hands. I assumed I was entitled to control your life because I thought I was smarter about money. And now? Now I know that assumptions can cost you everything. 3 months later, Derek knocked on my door again. This time he looked different. Thinner, worn down, but somehow more solid. He'd been working 2 jobs, morning shift at a warehouse, evening shift at a restaurant. No college degree required for either position. "Dad, can we talk?" I invited him in. This time I offered coffee. "I've been thinking about what you said, about assumptions." Derek's voice was steady now, without the entitled whine I'd grown used to. "You were right." "About what specifically?" "Everything. I assumed you were poor because you lived modestly. I assumed you were stupid because you worked factory jobs. I assumed your money should solve my problems." Derek pulled out his phone, showing me a banking app. "I've paid off $4,000 in credit card debt. Still have $30,000 to go, but I'm making progress." "How?" "By working. By living within my means. By not assuming someone else will fix my mistakes." "What about the house?" "Lost it. I'm renting a studio apartment on Mill Street. $800 a month. It's small, but it's what I can afford." $800 a month. Derek had gone from a 3-bedroom house to a studio apartment, from marketing manager to warehouse worker, from assumed millionaire heir to a man learning to live on what he actually earned. "Are you angry?" I asked. "At you?" "No." Derek met my eyes directly. "I'm angry at myself. I wasted 20 years thinking I was better than you because of a college degree and a title. But you built something real, while I just spent money I didn't have." Derek finished his coffee and stood to leave. "Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I know the money's gone forever. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you did it." "Why did I do it?" "Because consequences are the only thing that changes behavior. Because respect can't be bought or inherited. Because character matters more than comfort." At the door, Derek paused. Would you maybe like to have dinner sometime? Nothing fancy, just 2 men talking." I looked at my son, humbled, working, learning, finally growing up at 44. "I'd like that. Next Friday, I'll cook. What are you planning to serve?" Derek smiled for the first time in months. "Not dog food." After he left, I sat in my modest living room, surrounded by my practical furniture, in my paid-off house. Sometimes the quietest people have the loudest bank accounts. But more importantly, sometimes the hardest lessons are the most valuable gifts a father can give. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from.